Story 30X.
The Long Trek.
Sounds we know.
Ow as in owl. Eng as in length. Ong as in long. W as in which. Or as in claw. I as in bright. Th as in thick. J as in wedge.
Special words we know.
Our, know, laugh, ask, young, replied, more, other, about, here, both, water, what, again, 8.
New sounds.
All as in always.
Special words.
Fire, saw, before.
Some longer words.
Sandwiches, fantastic, reluctantly. The Long Trek. Hannah and Angus had been friends from the time they were chubby little toddlers. Their mums were good friends and they often spent holidays together. Both kids loved going camping and they always begged to go back to Bald Hill Camp. This time it was going to happen. Hannah and Angus had already planned to go on a big trek as soon as they got there. But, to their dismay, they weren't allowed to. They had to help set up the tents, light a campfire, and cook the dinner before it got dark. The next day, at dawn, when the kookaburras were laughing, Hannah and Angus sprang out of their tents and were ready to go. Then they heard a voice. "Don't forget to pack a jacket." It was Hannah's dad. "It's not cold," Hannah replied. "The sun is out." But her dad insisted. "All right then," said Hannah. Then a voice called from the other tent. "Have you got plenty of food?" This was Angus's mum. "We've got mandarins and sandwiches," said Angus. "Pack the nuts as well," she said. "I don't even like nuts, Mum," Angus yelled. "Better to be safe than sorry," she replied. When the adults were happy that they had what they needed, Angus and Hannah set off, up to Bald Hill Lookout. They started quickly, almost running, but before long the track got very steep. Their legs were getting sore and they stopped for a drink. Then off they went. The lookout was fantastic. Bald Hill is called bald because at the top there are no trees. The summit is a big smooth rock. Hannah and Angus sat right at the very top and looked down to where they'd come from. The tents were just distant dots. They had a snack of mandarins. Soon Angus asked Hannah, "Which way do you want to go now?" Several tracks led away from the lookout. Hannah picked one, and the two children set off. Before long the track got very narrow with thick scrub left and right. They kept going, twigs and branches scratching their legs until they came out into a paddock. They were in the bright sun again and soon began to feel hot and sticky. Their legs were itchy and stinging. They both had a big gulp of water and almost finished off the bottle. At the bottom of the paddock they saw a row of trees along a creek. "This is the creek that flows next to our camp," Hannah yelled. It was a lovely spot to stop for lunch, and they were starving. They plonked down on some mossy rocks and, in about 40 seconds, they had both gobbled up their sandwiches. Angus's dad had told them that the creek had good drinking water. This was lucky because their water bottle was already empty. Hannah lay down on her tummy and drank directly from the creek. Yum! Water had never been so good. Angus cupped the water in his hands and lifted it up to his lips, saying, "Mmm." "Let's cross the creek and take that track," said Angus. "All right," Hannah replied happily. They spotted a row of rocks crossing the creek. Hannah got across, but Angus slipped on the second rock. Splash! In went his boot. "Ah!" he yelled, but quickly added, "Oh well, doesn't matter." They crawled up the steep mossy bank and off they went. The sun was getting lower and the shadows were getting longer. It wasn't long before they felt hungry again. Hannah remembered the nuts and grabbed them from the backpack. Angus, who didn't even like nuts, also munched them hungrily. Soon after, Hannah said, "Maybe it's time to go back." Angus didn't want to, but he reluctantly agreed that it'd be hard to find the camp in the dark. They started back, but Angus's foot was getting sore. His wet boot was rubbing and he was getting a blister. Hannah was getting sick of carrying her backpack. Both of them felt like having a rest. The spots that had seemed so good on the way there weren't as nice on the way back. They started to wish they were back at the campfire already. The hills seemed steeper and the sun was going down. They badly wanted a rest, but they just had to keep going. So on they went, one foot and then the other, across the creek, the big paddock, the scrubby track, up to the lookout, and then down again. Until there it was, in the shadowy light of the evening, the campfire. How happy they were to be back. They had hot milk with a choc chip muffin and went to bed. Their sleeping bags had never felt so good. What a fantastic trek it had been. The end.
Words we've used.
Fire, because, already, saw, replied, all right, before, narrow, almost, light, sprang, also, water, smooth, bald, dawn, heard, always, again, voice, laughed.
Some new words we can now read.
Wheel, isn't, altogether, heard, learnt, earning, cloth, thickest, thunder, tight, upright, witches, straw, seesaw, jigsaw, crowd, tower, frown.